What is up, Packers fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Draft brought to you by Badger State Brewing in Green Bay, Wisconsin. We are doing another positional primer today. I'm very, very excited to be breaking down what is, depending on, I guess, who you talk to, but what is, I think, a serious need for the Green Bay Packers, and that is more talent in the cornerback room. And I would have no other man on to talk about the cornerback group than former cornerback himself, Mr. Eric Crocker. Crocker, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. Good morning. We're recording nice and early here on the West Coast. How's everything going in Packerland?
It's all good, man. It's all good. We're pleased that you were able to make the time for us, and we've definitely chatted before. But for those of you guys that are just kind of new to the Daily Draft, or Daily Draft is maybe the only time that you've taken in my content, just sort of explain, Eric, kind of who you are, your football background, and just kind of why we're talking to you about corners today.
Yeah, played cornerback position. I had the opportunity to play at or be on the New York Jets for a short stint of time, but I was on the New York Jets for some months and whatnot back in 2013. Played in the Arena League as a defensive back. Did well there. And I guess I got into this whole thing. I'd say this is the fun part about content creating, talking about cornerbacks to the extent that I do now. I got into this with no thoughts of what was to come, but just to kind of educate people on Twitter a little bit about the position because it's so difficult. It's such a difficult position to play. And I felt like the casual, I don't want to say the casual fan, but the diehard fans that are kind of casual as it pertains to the positions, I wanted to kind of explain what was going on to them. So I started off on Twitter. Nobody even knew who I was at all, really. But I would record like one-on-ones at Senior Bowl or record clips from a game when they would show the replay and they zoom in on the receiver and DB. And I'd explain exactly what was going on. And the more I did that, I feel like it started to take on a life of its own. And it turned into a lot of people kind of coming to me as it pertains to defensive back content. So it's fun. I have a great time doing it, coming on here, talking with you. We've done this a couple of times now in the past. And talking about cornerbacks, man, it never gets old. It's always fun to me. And it's always fun to hear the different ways that people see or view the position and how it kind of should be played.
So I've got a buddy. I've kind of wanted your take on this. I don't know if we've ever talked about kind of this statement he made, but I got before I was a married man, I had a roommate, and he had played corner for 1 year and safety for 3. Kind of like you, had a cup of coffee with the at the time San Diego Chargers, and had said, the corner position from a defensive back perspective is the easiest position to play mentally. It is the hardest position to play athletically. Is that kind of your vibe with it as well?
I would say it's the hardest position to play from a physical standpoint on the entire football field. Now, maybe a left tackle or something would disagree with me, saying, hey, well, you don't have Nick Bosa or, Zadarius Smith and these guys kind of running at you and having a two-way go. But I'd say from just a pure position of playing the cornerback position, man, it can be difficult because, one, more times than not, people see when you mess up. So just from a mental standpoint, not the X's and O's part, but just dealing with the ups and downs of playing the cornerback position. I can have 60 good reps in a game, but the moment I have 1 or 2 bad steps and it results in a bad rep, everybody tells me I suck and can't play the position. So I said from that standpoint, it's definitely the most difficult, being able to having to mirror match the movements of a receiver, not knowing where they're going and they know exactly where they're going and you're out in space. And obviously, depending on the scheme, it can make it more or less difficult. So I'd say that alone right there is challenging, but he's 100% spot on when he says the mental side of things. And it starts to get a little bit more mentally challenging at the NFL level, but for the most part at its core, the cornerback position mentally is probably the easiest because I got cover 1, I got cover 2, cover 3. I know my responsibilities. This is simple. Not a whole lot to have to remember outside of watching film and seeing what coordinators like to do in certain situations. With your coach kind of X's that out for you. So, I think he's spot on. Safety, mentally, much more difficult. And as someone who probably should have made the transition to a safety, because I was, bigger corner, 6'1", 6'2", around 200 pounds. ran a 4.55 ish. You know what I'm saying? Like in that range. I probably should have played more safety. But when I was in the league and I was with the Jets and I'm in those meetings and I'm listening to all the things that safeties have to do, it's like, dang, you're like the quarterback of the defense. This is too much on my puny brain. So I think he's spot on there with his analysis of the two positions.
And I like what you said about the kind of the exposure status too. Like I've always said, a defensive tackle can have a trash game and like guys might not notice, right? A safety could blow his assignment 6 times, and if the ball doesn't get thrown there, casual fan has no idea that that's going on. Corners and corners and tackles, it is so easy for fans to just be like, "Oh, this guy sucks," because if a receiver cooks you twice, they know it was you, right? And if you give up 2 sacks at tackle, they know it was you. So I mean, I'm with you 100%. Like the casual fan goes at corners and tackles constantly.
Here's a great example of this. It was a Sugar Bowl or whatever it was a few years ago. Yeah, Jamar Chase versus AJ Terrell.
Yeah.
Right. This is college football, LSU versus Clemson. And I thought AJ Terrell, viewing him as a prospect, because when you're analyzing a game as opposed to viewing somebody as a prospect, those are two different things.
Yeah.
So a lot of people ask me, like, man, what do you think about this guy? Maybe I watched him on TV during the season, but when I'm watching a game, as opposed to evaluating the prospect and breaking down the talent, those are two things. So I'm watching AJ Terrell versus Chase, who on my timeline, everyone is telling me, and I watched the game, but on my timeline, oh man, Jamar Chase cooked AJ Terrell. I can't believe AJ Terrell is considered to be a first-round pick. And oh my God, they're talking about all these bad things. But when you actually watch the film and watch those guys go at it, man, I thought AJ Terrell won just as many reps, if not more, than Jamar Chase, right? Like he made it very difficult on Chase. But what are we going to see? The deep ball where Chase creates separation at the top, catches the ball, runs it for a touchdown. Another deep ball, you notice those. But man, what about the 4 or 5 pass breakups that AJ Terrell had? What about on reps where Chase isn't throwing the ball and doesn't even get off a press? Or what about the times where AJ Terrell is sticky throughout a route? And I feel like those are things that, again, when as it pertains to the position, you're just going to notice more of the big plays that happen against this guy as opposed to a lot of the good. So there's definitely 2 different ways that you have to evaluate guys. You can watch a game and get a sense of kind of things that you like, but when you're breaking the tape down and film, that shows you more of what's consistent. That's part of the reason I do not watch highlights.
Yeah,
I couldn't tell you the last time I watched a prospect's highlight because I think it's unfair to the listener for me to get my take off of, oh man, they do this, they do that. But then I watch 3 games in a row where, the highlight is a compilation of, 3 years in 4 minutes, right? We're talking about maybe, 10 plays maybe in 3 years of the career. But when you're watching a game, it's 70 plays.
Yes.
I get a chance to see what this guy does consistently. I think there's just kind of a difference there with how people kind of sometimes view guys. They tell me, "Go, Croc, watch this highlight," or "Croc, watch this game." Well, why do I have to watch this specific game when I've watched this game, and got a sense of who this person is?
And I'll tell you too, like we'll get to the actual show here as we approach the 9-minute mark, but it's all right. We love topping it up about ball. You mentioned it's 70 plays. And guess what? If you screw up 6 times and Jamar Chase goes 6 for 105 and 2 touchdowns, you suck. And now AJ Terrell is one of the best one of the best corners in the league. So I'm with you there 100%. The one time I will check out a highlight tape, I'll tell you on DBs, it's not usually the corner position, it's safeties. If I see a safety with a bunch of missed tackles, or I keep noticing him missing tackles watching tape, and then I kind of go to the stats and look for missed tackles. And on his highlight tape, he's just decapitating people. I'll write that down. Trying to smoke people constantly has led to 18 missed tackles in his junior season. That's the one time that I'll check it out. I was actually doing that exercise yesterday because I was watching a bunch of Jaden Hicks at Washington State, the safety. Yeah. It's like, oh man, not a ton of missed tackles, but more than I'd want. Does he try to smoke people? And the second play of his highlight tape is him just absolutely laying waste to Braylon Allen, who is huge. I mean, the Wisconsin running back. Yeah. And it's like, oh, well, he's headhunting. Anyway, that's a tangent that's maybe unnecessary. All right.
Real quick, I don't want to put down anybody that watches highlights. Like your
right.
fans out there, you want to get a sense of a player that you're getting. Great. Like if the Packers in a month or so end up drafting Cooper DeJean, and we'll get to his film, and you want to go get a sense of kind of what he brings, and you watch highlights, man, have at it. You know what I'm saying, and you'll have an understanding. But from an evaluation or analysis standpoint, if I'm giving you the information, I can't at all go off of highlights. I have to go off of what's more consistent. Because if you go off of highlights and you watch Josh Jackson drafted out of Iowa a few years ago to the Green Bay Packers,
why do you have to be mean to me with Josh Jackson? Why do you have to be mean?
I mean, you see and it's like, oh man, 8 interceptions. Yeah. Wow, like he has such great ball skills. But if you would have watched my breakdown of him, you probably would have been like, I don't know about this guy.
Should have played him at free safety. Anyway, getting to the Packers kind of state of the room. That's something that we do here on the positional previews. And look, there's different ways of looking about it. We had Justice Mosqueda on here to break down the edge group, and he doesn't think they need a corner. I think that's insane, right? But there's a glass half full way of looking at it, which is that Carrington Valentine was a darn good player for a rookie starter, especially a rookie 7th rounder. I'm of the opinion that you don't let Carrington Valentine stop you from acquiring anybody. If it doesn't work out, the value doesn't meet the pick, the free agent doesn't meet, what we have in your mind for your budget at the cornerback position. Like Carrington Valentine is a fine plan A, B, C, D, whatever, but I'm not letting Carrington Valentine stop me from anything. People give Christian Watson a hard time, and I know this is something that Andy Herman's gone on about. Like Christian Watson's percentage of games played over the last 2 years is like significantly higher than Jair Alexander's percentage of games played over the last 2 or 3 years. Josh struggles to stay on the field. I have no idea if Eric Stokes, like he wasn't playing very well when he got hurt in his second year. Fine rookie season, kind of like Karen Valentine, fine rookie season, 1st round pedigree, Georgia, freak athlete, all those things. Maybe he was never that good. And maybe you talk about what happened with his injuries, he might be cooked. I'm not saying he is cooked, but he might be. So talking about a 7th round pick, a guy that struggles to see the field in Jair Alexander, and then Eric Stokes, a guy that may never be good again, was maybe never going to be good. I don't know. Now, all those things could work out just fine. And Green Bay could continue to kind of devalue the nickel position right now. Keyshawn Nixon is an unrestricted free agent. Granted, he is a back-to-back all-pro kick returner. Now, we've seen some potential changes with the league rules pertaining to kickoff, and if that starts to neutralize the kickoff return as an act, as a football play, I think Keyshawn Nixon's value decreases. I've been extremely vocal about never wanting to see another defensive snap of Keyshawn Nixon ever again. In fact, I've been super vocal about the Packers needing to start treating nickelback as a real position. I didn't like when they had Chandon Sullivan there and he got cooked. I didn't like having Keyshawn Nixon there. I don't like that they won't look at smaller corners that would fit at nickel in the draft, or they haven't looked at smaller corners that would fit at nickel in the draft. We'll talk about some of their thresholds moving forward, but I'm with Andy, and on the opposite side of Justice, they need corner talent. I would add an outside corner and a nickel, frankly. I would have you want to call it a 3-way dance? We'll call it a 3-way dance. I would have a competition between Carrington Valentine, Eric Stokes, and another player at the outside. And I would replace Keyshawn Nixon, absolutely. And frankly, like I said, Jair struggles to stay on the field. If Jair misses 8 games again, well, now you're down to Eric Stokes and Carrington Valentine. And that's a scary place to be. It's not where I want to be. So in my opinion, corner is a need position. I know that's not completely a shared idea around Packerland, but I would say it is probably the majority. I think I'm in the majority in saying that Green Bay needs to sort of check out the cornerback position. Croc, can I get sort of just your overview of this class? Is it a strong class? Do you like kind of the nickel candidates? Do you like the outside candidates? What have been your thoughts in going through some of these guys as far as you have gotten into the class?
I think from a nickel standpoint, there are a couple guys that are intriguing. I have to dive more into the kid out of Michigan, Sandstrom.
Oh, love him. He's good at football, man.
Yeah. Now he doesn't
fit.
He's
little, but he's good.
I was gonna say he doesn't fit the Packers threshold as it pertains to the size of corners that they like. But I'm spot on with you or we're right there with each other in the sense of what the nickel should look like. For a nickel, because of the position that they play, and we talked about the cornerback being difficult, really more specifically, the nickel has to be the most difficult position because you have to play in so much space. So you have to be more quick-footed, you have to be tough, physical, because you have to have run game fits, all right? But you have to be able to mirror and match guys in all this space. And you look at a guy like Sandstrom, I think he brings a certain level of confidence, physicality. He has that dog in him. And he has really good feet and twitchiness. So again, I try not to look at guys' measurements in 40 times because I don't want that to kind of trick my mind into thinking somebody is something that they're not. All right. So I try to go more off of the film and what that looks like. Is he being able to run with guys vertically? Is he being able to, match guys and see that change of direction as opposed to having to rely solely on like a 3-cone and whatnot? But I think he's a guy who, if the Packers were to say, you know what, let's go with more of a quote unquote traditional, smaller nickel guy, I think he'd be somebody that is intriguing.
A guy that you kind of wanted to wax poetic about, and I want to talk about him a little bit positionally as well, is Iowa's Cooper DeJean. Extremely popular pick for the Packers. He would be, if I were to say like, okay, who's a realistic player? And I know like Pro Football Focus has him as a top 10 or 12 player for them. I have him inside my top 12. There are people that really, really think he can be an awesome football player. But there are plenty of other places that you look, and he is available for the Packers, and he's picked to the Packers at 25. So if I were to pick like one guy in this class that I think could realistically be there at 25, the player that I would pick would be Cooper DeJean. And for me, like Cooper DeJean, I think if Green Bay is going to play, I'm not super high on his man coverage skills. And Jeff Hafley does, and Half was with your 49ers for a minute, and you might speak on that for a second if you want to. But like Half likes to play man. Boston College played a ton of man. And if he's not playing man, he's probably playing cover 3. And I kind of like Cooper as a cover 3 corner. That I think makes plenty of sense. Is his eyes, his ability to stay kind of locked in with the QB without going for hip fakes and head stutters and all that kind of stuff is impressive to me. But then there's, a lot of talk about the versatility piece. I watched a couple of games from his first year, I think, as a full-time guy with Iowa, and he played a ton of nickel corner, which I thought was super interesting. He's a thick kid and a tall kid for a corner too. I think he could be hell on tight ends. And ultimately too, there's the idea. I know we don't have actual, testing data because he did get hurt late in Iowa's season. I think there's a world in which Cooper DeJean is an extremely, extremely good free safety as well. So if you don't mind, Croc, just kind of give us your Cooper take, where you think he might fit. Could he fit at multiple spots? Can he survive at outside corner? Because here's my comp for Cooper, and it's kind of a cheap one because they went to the same school, and we're talking about, our team, but like, I think he's Micah Hyde if Micah Hyde was like 20% more athletic.
Did Micah Hyde, he went to Iowa?
Micah Hyde went to Iowa. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I have my overview of him. All right. So I'll read that. Then if you guys, want to get into more specifics of my notes, we could do that. But my overview, pulling up on the handy dandy notes here. Cooper, we'll call him Coop. All right. Yeah. Coop is an interesting prospect. I like him as a cornerback, but don't love him. I think he's a smart, tough, physical defensive back that does everything right, but nothing pops. I don't think he's a twitchy, sudden change of direction cornerback, but can be a versatile in zones and play man coverage with no issues running vertically with receivers. I think Cooper would be better suited as a chess piece / safety or nickel in your defense, a guy who plays safety but can also cover slots and tight ends. So that's kind of my overall view of him. Some of the things that I kind of noted, you talked about playing with his eyes. One of my first notes was Iowa's defense plays a lot of zone with eyes, especially number 3, which is him. 95% of the time, he's vision-based in his defense. I think he has good feet when pressed. He's more of a feet before hands guy, so he's not going to be like overly aggressive at the line of scrimmage. But I think he works well at the top of routes when his eyes are right. When his eyes are not right, he can get stuck at the top of the route with his feet. Some guys naturally just have really good feet, and they can their feet can do things without even having to kind of think about it. Kool-Aid McKinstry, I posted a clip of him today where he was in like a press bail, then he man turned, and then he sat on the route after all of that. And then you just see the feet, like he doesn't have to work really hard, doesn't have to use a lot of arms to get in and out of his breaks, but it's just so natural for him. I don't think Cooper has the same like natural feet as someone like Kool-Aid. Then I noted that there's a little stiffness in his game. Like he's not a super like naturally fluid athlete. I think he's an explosive athlete. And I think if you've seen clips of him dunking and things like that, you'll see that. But also with his dunks in those high school games, you'll see he's more of a power dunker, right? Like 2 feet jump power dunker. I think again, as far as being like just this fluid dunker or like poetic guy, I'm not sure he's quite that. So just watching him even on the football field, there's like this just a little stiffness to where he's not as naturally fluid as some of the other top corners in this class.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's why I see him as kind of like a nickel, like a tight end matchup guy or a free safety guy. I don't think that like the long term, and by the way, playing those positions well. And I think you kind of view it the same way. I don't see him as, all right, you draft Cooper DeJean and it's like Cooper on the left side, Jair on the right, and that's just how you roll. I don't think that's how it's going to work. Can you speak a little bit? And if the answer is no, it's fine, whatever. But like, can you speak a little bit to the new Packers defensive coordinator? I know this is going off script, but Jeff Hafley was with San Francisco for a long time, part of some very successful defenses, frankly, part of some very successful secondaries. Richard Sherman has had super nice things to say about him. Other defensive backs that were with the 49ers have had super nice things to say about him. What can you kind of say about Haf?
Yeah, so when he was with the 49ers, and he actually lasted through 2, maybe 3 regimes, he was just the defensive back coach. So going from defensive back coach, he ended up going to Ohio State, I believe it was, and doing some things with Ohio State. And then he left to Boston College and was their head coach. So as far as his style of defense, I'm not 100% sure because I never saw him like call plays or anything, right? Like we'll say Wilkes, and it might even be more difficult with Wilkes because he kind of ran more what Kyle Shanahan wanted him to do. But like Robert Saleh, if you would ask me about Robert Saleh and the type of defense he would bring, or even D'Amico Ryans, like I have a bit more clear of an understanding of what he likes. Hafley, as a position coach, you're going more off of what the coordinator likes, and then you're just making sure that mentally your guys are able to go out there and execute the game plan. So as far as what he would ideally like to do, I'm not sure, but I do know you won't hear anybody that doesn't speak highly of the caliber of defensive back coach that he was. And I think what speaks volumes the most out of anything is him lasting through several regimes. Because as you guys know, and we all know, a lot of times when a new regime comes in, they cut bait with a lot of the coaches, and they're bringing the guys that they like and that know and that they're familiar with. And for him to last through multiple regimes, I think that says, this is a guy that, people think very highly of. So I'm not sure exactly the style he would like. I do remember watching, there was some Boston College DBs the last 2 years that I watched, and I thought they did a really good job with things, just in the sense of pattern matching, understanding concepts, being able to read the concepts from press alignment or off, having good feet, staying square. And I'm not saying that I just dove like super deep into it, but sometimes when I'm watching film on one guy, like I think I was watching the receiver out of UNC, Diami Brown. I'm watching Diami Brown, and I'm watching Diami Brown against Boston College, and I just noticed how their DBs were playing. I'm like, man, look at this! Like, look at this leverage step. He's keeping his leverage. He's cutting. He's not allowing the receiver to cross his face. He's getting in and out of his breaks. Like, there were things where, again, I'm not watching the Boston College guys. I'm trying to watch Diami Brown and identify like what he is and what he does well. But you couldn't help but notice some of the good tendencies that the Boston College DBs had. I don't know how big of a hand he had in that, being the head coach. Did he take a step back, have somebody else do those things? But I did notice like those guys, I felt like for a school that isn't getting the top tier talent, they had guys playing very well.
Yeah, I agree. And that's one thing, like you go back to that, I think that 19 Ohio State team, and like he got everybody drafted, and most of them turned out to be not that good. Like he got Jordan Fuller drafted, he got Sean Wade drafted, he got Okuda in the top 5, and Damon Arnett in the first round. And it turns out maybe none of them can actually play. You know what I mean? And so the other thing that I'll say too about the potential fit there is, and I think a guy gets biased, right, when he watches his own team, but I swear the Packers led the league in just turning guys butt ass wide open loose. I mean, that's dudes like miscommunications and just actual coverage breakdowns and just failures of passing one guy to the next guy. Green Bay struggled with that tremendously, where you would have in a key spot, sometimes even the other team's best receiver just by himself running across the field.
One of my notes, and you guys might not be able to see it there, but the pros, look at that first note right there. Pros, smart, won't bust coverage. Won't bust coverage. So
yes.
We're if that has been an issue with Green Bay, it seems like he'd be somebody that comes in and that won't be an issue that you deal with.
Right. Okay. Getting into kind of the threshold stuff, and this will be kind of my dojo. What Brian has liked, certainly learning from then Ted Thompson before him and Ron Wolf. We've talked about that a lot. What are kind of the things that the Packers prefer? Well, in general, they like 5'11 plus corners. Jair Alexander was a little, I think, below that, but like I said, in general, that is sort of the desire, is to be taller than 5'10 and 7/8, be 5'11 or more. They really prefer thicker corners because they have wanted you to sort of be able to tackle. That line seems to be 190 pounds. They like their corners to run faster than the 4.6 40, and they really like cornerbacks whose 3-cone times are sub 7. Now, we don't have a ton of that data. Okay. Right. So the way that and I'll just explain this because I've talked about this a lot and I don't know that I've explained it fully. The way that the combine has been run ever since it went to prime time, which whatever, I get it. They get good ratings. Like, I make your money. I'm fine with all that, but they have shifted the agilities to off screen for the most part. And at the end of the day, so these guys are asked, and by the way, teams care. Like, teams really care. It's not just the Packers that care about these shuttle times and 3-cone times. You have done your bench, or no, I don't think the bench. I shouldn't say bench. I'm sorry. You've done your jumps. You've done your 240s. You've done all the positional drills, and then you get shuffled off to a different area. And at the end of all of that, you're supposed to run your best possible agilities. Guys don't run them. They're not running them. You can go look at the like 40s and how long the list is, because the NFL website will list the fastest 40 at each position down to the slowest. Go to the 3-cone. It's like 6 guys. Go to the short shuttle. It's like 8 guys. They're just not running agilities. So when I talk about the Packers loving 3-cone time, it's just data that we don't have. A couple quick Packers fits, though, that have hit every single metric that we know about so far. We have Nehemiah Pritchett from Auburn. He's an interesting guy, and he hits the height requirement and the weight requirement and the 40 time requirement. We don't have agilities for him. Quinyon Mitchell is something else, and I don't know how much Quinyon you've watched, but
that's the guy I'm trying to find the film. I'm gonna have somebody send me. That's the kid from Toledo, right?
Yeah, yep. Kamari Lassiter from Georgia didn't run and ended up 4 pounds light, but had an absolute freak show 3-cone time of 6.62. If he can run a sub 4.6 40, like if he has a mid 4s 40, which I think is probably his bag, would be my just on watching him. At 5'11 and a half, running a 6.6 240 and playing at Georgia, where the Packers have taken Devontae Wyatt, Quay Walker, Eric Stokes. I might point you at Kamari Lassiter, Packers fans. Like I said, he runs at 40. I don't know how much Green Bay is going to care about those 4 pounds from 186 to 190, especially when they're not on like a 6'2" frame. He's 5'11 and a half. He can be a little, a touch light. Other guys that have hit everything that we know about, Jerrion Jones, who's a super fun nickel out of Florida State, and I'd be very interested in his agilities because I like Jerrion Jones quite a bit. Max Melton from Rutgers, Bo's brother. Bo caught that touchdown against the 49ers in the playoffs. Max is 3 pounds light and hits everything else, but he's 3 pounds light. The other one, and this, if you're going to play some cover 3, at 6'3 and a half, Kyrie Jackson out of Oregon hits everything so far. So those are some interesting
Big
Packers
guy.
fits where we actually have, enough like guy like Kamal Hadden at Tennessee. Well, he's 6'1" and an eighth and he's over 190, but we have no other data. So I'm not going to pretend like you need to watch him because we have no other stuff. But those guys, and Pritchett's interesting to me. I mean, I did not expect him to run the way that he did. And both Auburn corners, DJ James, although DJ is 175 pounds, that's going to be a far reach for Green Bay. But
And I
Pritchett's
like him.
interesting.
He has some versatility in him. I think
Yeah,
he's a guy that can play nickel at the next level.
I agree, and we might have to, and he's got to prove that he can tackle then at that weight. The guy that's crazy to me, and he was my CB1, and really I haven't moved him much off of that. I like the way he plays. How much Nate Wiggins have you watched? Because he's got outstanding length at 6'1", runs a 4.28, and I was in on him before I knew he was going to run a 4.28, but 6'1", 173 is a stick figure. I mean, that's crazy, right? How much Wiggins have you watched?
Yeah, I've watched some Wiggins, man. One, the first thing that jumps out, you watch a couple games, you watch the UNC game, you watch the Miami game. There are two plays in those games where you say, wow, okay, this might be my type of guy. Effort, right? Like a big part of it, like how much do you care, right? Like, do you care, effort, things like that? Obviously, you want guys that have the ability. Clearly, he does. But the effort to kind of go along with that. In the UNC game, could have just let the guy score, literally chased him down, came from, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 yards back, ran past his teammates to get to the guy, boom, punches the ball out right at the goal line. Ball ends up going out of bounds. He saves a touchdown. I love that effort. Did the same thing in the Miami game. I'm watching the Miami game. A running back burst through the middle of the field. He's off. Looks like he's just scotch-free going to score a touchdown. And I had already seen the UNC game, so I'm like, okay, where is he at? Where is he at? Where's Wiggins at? Next thing you know, comes out of nowhere, chases the guy down from behind. It's almost like the LeBron James block when LeBron
Yep.
it's like you're on the fast break and LeBron's on the court too, and he gets these chase down blocks all the time. That's Wiggins with these forced fumbles right at the goal line. This time a Miami offensive player recovered it in the end zone, but just from an effort standpoint, I'm like, oh man, like I love that part about him. Now he's a little bit high cut, a little bit long legged. With how like his movement skills, I don't think he's like, again, as it pertains to being like super twitchy or sudden, not quite that guy. But I do think he has good coverage, man coverage skills. I think he can be a little more, what's the word I'm looking for? A little bit more play with like a sense of urgency at the top of routes, right? To really kind of squeeze and close that gap. I think he can do better with that. But that's something like I feel like I can coach up. And for me, I'm really big on what can I coach? What can't I coach? A lot of his physical traits, you just can't coach. Like he just has those things. A lot of things where I'm just like, oh man, like if he just focuses a little bit more closing and there's a little bit more attention to detail there, man, how much better would he be? And I see it at times. I felt like it could just be a little bit more consistent. As far as how I feel overall, he did play a lot of off coverage. I kind of referenced but he also can play a lot of press as well. But I referenced that UNC game. And the kid, we talked about AJ Terrell a little bit earlier.
Yep.
His brother. So first of all, with Nate Wiggins, I didn't know who the 100% like who the top guys are in this class. So I'm watching Cooper DeJean, the corner of the Iowa, and I'm watching him. I'm like, there's something missing. There's something missing. Let me go watch some of the higher end guys, like, and then come back to Cooper. So Clemson was where I put on. I'm watching Nate Wiggins, and 20. If I didn't know any better, I would say 20 is the guy that everybody's saying is a top prospect, like is a top draft pick. And 20 is AJ Terrell's little brother. And he was, I mean, just jumped off the film. It was an amazing watch as a cornerback. Like if you want to watch a cornerback and like him, you watch that of number 20. So I thought he kind of stole the show there. I never saw that in Wiggins, but I did see a lot of good. He did get bombed on in that game, playing against a good receiver from UNC. But I thought overall, running vertically with guys, I don't think will be an issue with him. There is a little Stokes to his game. I think that's a good way to put it. There's a little Stokes, and I think you guys are obviously familiar with Stokes and him coming out of Georgia. I would say their play styles are kind of similar.
One little bit of good news, though. We talk about the Mikey Sanders still love, and I would say when you vert 40 inches, you can maybe make up for being 5'9" and a quarter. And he hits the 40, ran a 4.47, which I thought was a great time for him. and he did have that sub-7 3-cone. So if Green Bay is going to if Green Bay is going to sort of agree to treat the nickel as its own position and not be super obsessed about height, weight, I think Sanders still hits the rest of their stuff. So, and they need him. I mean, they need a player like him in a bad way. So that's a guy to look at. I'm going to jump in here, and then we'll kind of get things wrapped up. My favorite guys in this class, and I kind of talked to Croc, and full disclosure, Croc basically said, like, I'm heavy on the top guys. So he's going to kind of talk about some of them. I've been deeper into this class. That's actually my position which is new. I've done a ton of for years on Packers specific draft guides. I've done a ton of wide receiver evals, and I've done a ton of edge evals, a ton. And got moved to cornerback this year, and it's been an exciting kind of switch. Not something that I've done before, and I've been like I said, it's been fun. So guys that I like a ton, Cooper DeJean. I think he's my 11th overall player, and I would guess that that's a little bit higher than consensus. I think, though, as Croc said, I think a chess piece, but that doesn't mean he's not valuable. Like Micah Hyde has been an all-pro, and like I said, I think this is Micah Hyde with more athleticism. I mean, his instincts are that good, his eyes are that good, his give a crap is that good. Like I'm very high on Cooper DeJean.
Love him as an overall player. Again, I said, like him as a corner, love him more as a chess piece. So you bring up Micah Hyde, and I remember him on Green Bay, and obviously what he's done in Buffalo. I think that's a terrific. If you told me you were getting Hyde in him, and even with a little bit more, explosiveness as a player, smart, and you have the return ability as well, I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, totally agree. Have enjoyed again Mikey Sanders still. I give him like a really, really high 3rd round grade just because I think there's zero chance he does anything but play nickel. So like whatever kind of value that is to you, but I also think he's a 10-year starting nickel in the league. So again, like whatever value that has for you. And then the kind of later, quote unquote, later round guy that I find super interesting is Andrew Phillips, another nickel. Drew Phillips from Kentucky. He's a fun watch. There's a lot of really fun nickels. It's a good year to need a nickel. It's a year that hopefully Green Bay will kind of admit that they need a nickel and kind of go after one, because I had a ton of fun watching Jerry and Jones at Florida State. I had a ton of fun watching Drew Phillips at Kentucky. We've already talked about Sanders still. There are folks that think that ultimately Max Melton's position is inside at nickel. Mizzou has 2 corners in Rakestraw, who really struggled at the combine, but in Rakestraw, and then
what did he do at the combine?
What's that?
What did he do at the combine?
It was not great overall. I think he tested out as like a 40th-ish percentile athlete. So he ran a 4.54 and weighed in at sub 185 and did the broad jump at 10, which that is like a 50th percentile. Broad, like corners should broad more than that. Did not vert, did not run any agilities, ran slow and weighed in light. so it didn't, that was not, I'm sure, what he was looking for. Right. I always kind of projected Ennis as a nickel, and probably a darn good one because he tackles his butt off and he tries, but I don't know what to do with him other than to play him at nickel. So that was kind of my thing with Rakestraw. If you're going to run 4.55 or 4.54 at 183, 5'11", you're a nickel. That, to me, that at the NFL level, you're a nickel.
And it's interesting. Like, again, I watch the film. Sometimes I don't know these guys' size, and I want their movement skills and ability to tell me kind of what they are. Cooper DeJean, to me, he came off as someone that was a little bit heavier with his movements, and then I find out he's 208 pounds. Oh, okay, understandable then. With Rayshaw, watching him, I thought he moved like a bigger corner. So for you to tell me he was 5'11", 184, that's not ideal for his movement skills. You would expect somebody with that kind of height and weight to be more fluid and twitched up and have more 7 feet, more like a Kool-Aid, right? Like Kool-Aid is shade under 6 feet and right around like 200 pounds. But he moves like somebody that's 5'11", 184, which is good. Like you want to be the bigger body that moves better. And to hear that from Rachel, like I didn't know what his height, weight was, speed. I didn't know any of that, but that's very telling when watching this film.
And part of the problem is Mizzou lists him at 6'1", 190. So you're like, oh, he's a bigger, that's bigger corner. You know, he's got some length, 6 foot. And then he gets to the combine. It's like, no, he's 5'11" and 3/8 with 32-inch arms. He doesn't have length. You know what I mean? And it's not like every corner that's that size doesn't work out. But again, if he moves like a bigger corner and he's not, screams nickel to me. Any guys, Croc, that you've kind of watched where you ended up higher on than consensus? Anybody that you watch where you're like, I don't know why they're complaining about this, or I don't see that, you know, anybody that you kind of your guy at corner so far?
Well, I'd say right now, I mean, Kool-Aid has probably been my favorite corner that I've watched out of this class. You know, we've talked to, and I've mentioned him a few times, but just the feet, right? Like the feet first. To me, you see someone that just has natural feet at the cornerback position. I love that. I watch him in press. I think he's a scrappy press guy who plays with good anticipation at the top of routes. You know, and then I watch him in zone, right? I watched him on the goal line. I forgot which film I was watching, but I watched him on the goal line and he's in press alignment. So everybody, you know, they kind of get this part confused, right? When they see somebody pressed up at the line of scrimmage, that is press alignment. The act of getting hands on is jamming, which is a technique. All right. But so he's in press alignment and the receiver goes in, runs like a slant. He squeezes that, comes off to the flat route, reads it seamlessly, boom, makes a tackle for no gain. And, you know, just see a guy that is able to react with his mind as well as be able to react with his feet, even when he's not anticipating or then when he is anticipating. That's a corner I really like. And he comes off as someone who I feel like could play in multiple spots. What I mean by that is, you know, you look at Jair Alexander. He's a guy who isn't the biggest guy, right? But he has that certain level of physicality. He has the speed. He can run with anybody. Man, I watch Jair Alexander play guys outside. I watch him go inside against a guy like Brandon Cooks, shut Brandon Cooks down playing in the slot, right? You can do all kind of different things with him. I feel like that's kind of a Kool-Aid, right? Kool-Aid reminds me a lot of Janoris Jenkins. Now, Janoris Jenkins, he's somebody you probably didn't want off a whole lot because he started to have kind of these brain farts. But Kool-Aid seems to be someone who can play off, play press, play outside, play inside, move around, run with anybody, certain level of physicality. Will he give up a catch? Whatever, right? I saw A.D. Mitchell get him down the sideline, but the coverage was pristine. Like the ball had to be in the most perfect place, and Mitchell had to make the most perfect catch, right? So a guy that's going to challenge guys at the catch point and can play in multiple spots and play with a certain level of confidence with the ability he has, that's probably, so far, out of guys I've watched, probably my favorite corner in this class.
All right, Eric, thank you so much. I'm going to wrap things up here with the question that we ask at each one of these shows, which is, the Packers are going to pick once in round 1, twice in round 2, twice in round 3. Shout out to the Aaron Rodgers and Rasul Douglas trades. They will have their own pick in round 4, and then they will have a compensatory pick in round 5 because of the deal that Alan Lazard signed with the New York Jets. Shout out to Aaron Rodgers for getting his boy a job. Green Bay will pick 7 times in the first 5 rounds. And the question has been, gun to your head, do they take a player at this position with or before the Alan Lazard pick? The answer is easy. Yes. I don't think there's any way that Green Bay gets through the first 5 rounds unless they go out and sign my guy, Kendall Fuller, and maybe even another guy. But I think they're going to be heavier in the safety market than they are in the corner market. We were going to do this disclaimer and we didn't. Disclaimer. It's Thursday, March 7th. Okay. Eric and I are both fully aware that free agency is basically going to be happening when you get this episode. So kind of the team need aspect of this might be a little bit different. But if what happens, what I think is going to happen happens, and that Green Bay is more active in the safety market than they are in the corner market. And honestly, even if they sign one guy, and Kendall Fuller's my guy because I think you play inside or outside and give you an upgrade at either spot, giving you more freedom in the draft. Either way, I think if they sign one upper mid-level free agent at the corner position, I still don't think they get out of round 5 without taking a corner. Eric, man, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it tremendously.
All right. Thanks for having me on.
Folks, thank you so much for watching and thank you for listening. If you're on the podcast side, how can you help us out? Buy the Green Bay Draft Guide powered by Packer Report using promo code DAILY. That is DAILY, as in the Daily Draft, the very show that you are watching, for 10% off that Packer specific guide, which is going to be most excellent. We appreciate all of you that have already bought the guide. You can check us out at Packer Report, where the first month of VIP status is always only $1. Check us out, and if you like us, upgrade that bad boy to an annual and save yourself some money. Otherwise, you can follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter. I am at Ross Uglem, and do everything you're supposed to do here on the Pack a Day podcast. Like, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications so you are getting all of the Packers content you need every single day. Have a phenomenal rest of your day, folks, and go Pack Go.